All right, joining me once again here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is my friend Mariame Kaba. Mariame is a Chicago-based organizer, educator, and writer. She is founder and director of Project NIA, a group working to end youth incarceration, and the writer of the blog Prison Culture, which you can find at usprisonculture.com. You can also find her on Twitter at Prison Culture. Mariame, thank you so much for being on the show again.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so Mariame, I think most people around the country have by now heard about, well, at least a little bit of what's going on in Chicago when it comes to the police murder of Laquan McDonald and the cover-up that's gone on for 400 plus days afterwards. I guess let's begin. Tell people what they might not know about what happened in Chicago that they actually should know.
Sure. I think I'll just start by saying that the Laquan McDonald case is not news for the people who've been doing work around police violence in the city of Chicago for any period of time. When Laquan McDonald was killed in October of 2014, there was already kind of, a few people kind of asking a few questions. Those folks were mostly independent media people and activists. When Jamie Calvin basically started asking questions and put out an article early in the year about this case, this young man who was 17 years old who was shot 16 times, that article came out prior to our mayoral election, which ended up being a very contested election. Our current mayor, the incumbent, Rahm Emanuel, was pushed to a runoff by the challenger, Choi. So while this is happening, there's a lot of push happening in the city around reparations for police torture survivors, other fights that had been going on. So the Laquan McDonald case kind of got subsumed under all of this other action that was going on and other protests that were happening around policing and violence in Chicago. So people have known also that there was a tape. And it wasn't until an independent journalist filed a FOIA request and sued to try to get that tape that we began to hear more and more about this tape that existed that showed a horrific execution-like murder of a young 17-year-old black boy by Chicago Police Department officer. And that, has kind of went through the summer. And finally, when the Judge Valderrama came down with his decision early this month in November and said that they had to the city had to release this by a certain date, and he gave the date as being November 25th, then that was where the floodgates opened. The city began a lot of damage control, calling various constituent groups and asking for rushed meetings with those particular constituencies. A group of young black leaders and organizers in the city was invited to come and speak to the mayor. I think it was on the 24th of November. They rejected that very publicly. Some clergy people came together and ended up meeting with the mayor, also rushed and pulled together. Today we find out that the mayor basically said to those people, I expect you to keep the calm and keep the peace in your communities. Otherwise, don't come back to me asking for jobs. That's quoted in the Alder Track newsletter this morning, and that apparently that really got the ire up of these black pastors who came to meet with the mayor on a rushed basis. So he was doing a lot of damage control before trying to release this particular video, because part of the press, particularly the mainstream press, was acting as though the video would lead to riots, quote unquote, and uprisings, similar to, they kept saying, we don't want to be another Ferguson, we don't want to be another Baltimore. And I think a lot of that has to do with people who were kind of stoking the flames, but don't really understand Chicago. There was never going to be a Baltimore or Ferguson here with the release of that tape, because frankly, it's not like the release of a tape that leads people to uprising. It's other issues that lead people to uprising, right?
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about what people should know about what happened here in terms of the history of the progeny of this tape and, the reaction of our administration here, the mayoral administration here to the release of the tape.